Alright, web services, I got a challenge for you. I have an error with a deployed service. First of all, let's show you what I have first. Um, in the WCF layer, I've got a new service called sample addresses, and the sample addresses service, all this is going to do is call the DAL layer, list the sample addresses that I had. There's a couple of sample addresses in a table called sample addresses. It's going to serialize it as XML, and then return that XML string through the output parameter of list sample addresses. Locally, it works. So let me start it. I have this set as startup project and this set as startup page. When I run it, SVC is the extension, and the SVC is recognized by a program called WCF Test Client. If you don't have this, if it doesn't work like this, if you just get a web page, go to go to your C drive and look for this program called WCF Test Client.exe. It is this program here. What it does is it sets up a proxy. It's like a standalone client to call a service. If that makes any sense. In other words, you can't really test this thing, but to call it by something else. In other words, this method is expecting some other service to call it. This is that test client is that test sort of service or client. I already added the address. It already has discovered list sample addresses. Let me expand this so we can all read it. If I double click it, there's no parameters to pass. It will formulate a response. If I click invoke, it's executing that DAL. It does return, and it returns a couple of the addresses that I have, and everything's cool. Works fine. If I deploy this to the beanstalk, cool. Right click and say publish to AWS. Um, you know what? I just published it, so I know I didn't make any changes. So I'm not publishing again. It's not going to do anything different. If I go out to the AWS page, go to services, go to the beanstalk, which is here. This is the .NET application. This is the services application. Let's go to the URL. It's actually under VT and sample addresses.svc. So it's there. Okay. If I wanted to call that test client manually, the way I do it is I'll start that test client and go to Visual Studio 2002. I put a shortcut in there, but you'll have to find that program. Copy this web address and add it to here. So what it's going to go out and do is look for that WSDL file, the WSDL file, and it's going to do the hooks, in other words, to figure out what methods are available, what the return response is, and all that stuff. And it's going to figure this out. And it found list sample addresses. If I double click it again and click invoke, it should do the same thing as it did locally. However, I get an error, and I'm pretty sure it's a setup error. There's some setting somewhere that's not allowing it to connect. If we go to the config file, it tells me, yep, the endpoint, the binding, the contract, all that stuff looks good to me. So that's my challenge to you. My guess is, let's read that message again. It says, the server was unable to process the request due to an internal error. For more information about the error, either turn on include exception details in false, either from the service behavior attribute or from the beginning of service dialog. So it's basically saying I'm sure if you Google search, you'll find 1,000 people that have the same error. All I want to know is why I'm getting the error and then fixing the error. Again, it has to do with permissions. That's the only thing that makes any sense, because I can run it locally with the same exact setup, and it works locally. But when I execute over the web, I do get an error. So I pose this as a challenge to you to help me fix. Excellent. So let me post this video, and I'll post an assignment for your particular group. And please let me know if you have any questions. And thank you very much. See ya.